You know, in more ways than not, The Last Jedi and the hit cinematic masterpiece Twilight are more similar than I think we want to give it credit for. There's unnecessary shirtlessness, people tend to ship an emotionally manipulative relationship, and it was incredibly divisive amongst moviegoers. I mean, I'm not saying they're the same movie, but The Last Jedi is the most Twilight-esque Star Wars movie.
Hip hip! Boo! Hip hip! Boo! Hip hip!
Boo! You stink!
Who's going to attack me for this video? Here we are. We are almost finished reviewing all the Star Wars movies. After this, there's one more to go, and that is The Rise of Skywalker. It's almost like I planned it this way. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. This is not a video I was excited to make. You know, it's not because I really have that much beef against The Last Jedi, but because it's not exactly an agreed upon movie as far as experience goes. I mean, some people love it, some people hate it, some people fall in between. I'm one of those people. And I think it's important to kind of get your view on The Last Jedi out in the open right away, because it is a movie that people feel very passionate about. Now, I'm going to avoid talking about relationship stuff despite what I hinted at in my little intro there, because in reality, I already did that.
Remember, concentrate on the moment. Feel, don't think.
My thing with The Last Jedi, and this has always been my stance since I first saw it, since I exited the movie theater in 2017, it is simultaneously the best of Star Wars and the worst of Star Wars. It is the most disjointed Star Wars movie. Now, you can say what you want about the prequels.
But this is such a drag.
We knew where they were going. No! And that is a bad thing and a good thing in a way. You know, it doesn't try anything too out of its league, which is... ugh.
Don't do that again.
In this one, it was really important to a lot of people that they stepped out of the box. The Force Awakens, a lot of people said it's very similar to A New Hope. And some people say that in a good way or a bad way. I'm, again, in the good way camp. But it was important to me that The Last Jedi, that second installment in the sequel trilogy, be different. It didn't want it to be like Empire Strikes Back, even though Empire Strikes Back is my favorite Star Wars movie. I wanted it to go off in its own direction. And sometimes... and other times, oh, goodness, what were they thinking? We pick up, Luke tosses the lightsaber off the edge. I'm like, we are in good shape. Which is how I pretty much feel for the first 20 minutes of this movie. I feel like we are in excellent shape. All of the stuff with Poe and with Leia and with Rey and even Luke in the very beginning of the movie, we are off to a strong start. So where does it start to go awry? Well, when the movie tries to split off into several parts, you know, like the stuff with the Resistance actually feels very effective and very strong. And I maintain that this might be Carrie Fisher's best performance as Princess Leia, and the fact that it's her last one in terms of her actually physically acting in it and being a part of the movie is absolutely heartbreaking, but she does such a good job here that it feels almost like a proper send-off. Even though it isn't a send-off, I spent the entire time in the theater for this movie in absolute agony, just waiting for them to kill her off, and then they didn't. And, you know, depending on how they handle that in Rise of Skywalker, we're going to see how that pans out. You know, if she goes out with a bang in Rise of Skywalker and it's better and this way they got to use as much footage of her as possible, I'm okay with that. But if it goes in a direction I hate, I'm going to be like, okay, well, you had your opportunity in The Last Jedi. And that's kind of the tricky part with these movies in a way, because you're kind of reviewing all of them when you're talking about them. It's very difficult to review them on an individual basis. But this movie, it tries very hard to continue off where the last one left off and then trying to really propel you for the next one. But the problem is that it's like 3 different movies. We have the Rey and Kylo and Luke drama that, in my opinion, doesn't play out the way that it should have. One of the things that I hated in response to The Force Awakens was the accusation that Rey was a Mary Sue. Now, those who don't know what a Mary Sue is, it's kind of a derogatory term against female characters when they are overpowered, in a sense. And do I think this term is thrown around very loosely? Absolutely. You know, anytime a woman in Star Wars or in a big franchise like Star Wars has or shows some talents and strengths, some people tend to label that as a Mary Sue. But I could see where some people were coming from with this. You know, she didn't have any training, but we did know she was a good fighter, at least in The Force Awakens. She's more or less showing off her physical strength as opposed to her ability with the Force. This movie doesn't take her through any of the motions that they needed to. She needed to be trained under Luke. Instead, they go on this weird philosophical debate where Luke hates the Jedi. And it's like, okay, I think that step for Luke was necessary. And Mark Hamill disagrees with this too. So, like, you know, take that how you will. But the problem with keeping Luke an eternal optimist is that during the entire original trilogy, when he is an optimist and when he is feeling like he can bring Vader back to the good side, he hadn't been directly affected by Darth Vader. He hadn't been afflicted by his actions in such an impressionable way that would affect him. Of course he can bring him back to the light. Of course he's full of goodness. He's still young, and not as much has happened to him as it's happened to other characters. Obi-Wan and Yoda, of course they're a little bit more jaded about the whole experience. They were the ones who witnessed the massacre of Jedi and witnessed Anakin's betrayal, so of course that hits them a little bit harder than Luke, who's coming to the scene later. The deal with Kylo and him turning to the dark side, that's going to have the same effect on Luke. He's going to feel darker, and he's going to feel sadder, and he's going to have his hope in the Jedi tested. But the issue is that he needed to come back to that, and he needed to kind of come full circle and join up with Rey. And instead we got, like, a good amount of time of Luke just parading around the island, drinking weird milk from something's nipple. I hope. There's way too much time directed to this. And I think that's my biggest complaint with The Last Jedi, is that for as exciting as its great moments are, its slow moments are so slow in terms of, like, let's just follow Luke around the island and watch him be a hermit. And then let's go to Canto Bight and waste an entire portion of the movie. Oh, that's my beef with this movie. It takes its time in ways where it definitely shouldn't. I want to hear about Luke's stance on the Jedi. I want to get things going in that way. I want to have this build up for him versus Kylo Ren, and I want that to mean something. And I want Rey to progress in her ways of the Force. Instead, she's kind of standing around here like, I just want a teacher. I just want someone to show me my place in all of this. And I get it, because she deserves that. Her character deserves that. Daisy Ridley deserves that. Instead, it's just this weird, like, her begging Luke to train her and then being like, you know what, screw you, I'm gonna go take care of business with Kylo. And I'm like, okay, but we still haven't trained you. We gave you a little scene where you were reaching out with the Force and you went straight for the darkness, but it's just never addressed. And then Canto Bight. Why did it happen?
Greed can be a powerful ally.
If you would have showed me this, like, 10 years ago and said, this was a cut scene from the prequel trilogy, but with better effects, I'd have said, yeah, probably. And, like, this kind of story might work in, like, a Clone Wars or a Rebels episode, where you have an entire season to tell a narrative. But let me ask you this. Why are we doing that when Finn already had an exciting story that we could have followed him on? He was brainwashed and forced to fight in a regiment that he woke up from and didn't agree with, against an extremely cool looking figure who could be a Boba Fett but done well if they decided to do it well. And sometimes I struggle with critiquing these movies. I struggle with critiquing the new movies for things that the old movies did. But in this case, I maintain we probably should have learned from it. Let's learn from our mistakes and do things better. This movie decides to shove Phasma to the side and just have her be a toy to sell. So blatantly. She has, like, this fight with Finn in the end, and it's cool looking, but, like, why was that not what we were building up to the entire time? Why did we have this off-the-rails Rose and Finn? And I don't have any problem with Rose Tico's character. I don't have issue with her. I just don't see the relevance in what's going on. The beginning of the movie with Rose and her sister, I thought that was gonna be powerful stuff, and it just doesn't become anything. And that's my issue with The Last Jedi. It just has so many good things going for it. This is the best acted Star Wars movie of all time. You cannot convince me otherwise. Kylo Ren, he's Kylo Ren, but Adam Driver's a fantastic actor, and him and Daisy Ridley do have chemistry. Even though I don't like their relationship at all, I don't want that to go anywhere in a romantic sense. I can acknowledge that these two actors, because they are probably the best actors in the entire franchise, Oscar Isaac is up there as well, that yes, they do have a good acting repertoire they have a good acting camaraderie together. Their scenes are effective, and the Rey and Kylo stuff, I'm here for it. Like, in terms of the way that the story is going, I do enjoy those scenes. And anytime the movie decides to throw some action at you, it's wonderful. Whoever decided to arrange that entire Red Room scene where they fight those Praetorian guards, that is probably my favorite lightsaber scene in Star Wars. And now you see my conflict.
I feel the conflict within you. Let go of your hate.
It's beautiful, and it's amazing, and it is impactful when Ben and Rey decide to fight against all these things, and it's just this cool plot twist, because you're like, holy shit, this is something. Like, this is what we needed this entire movie. We needed this momentum the entire time. And like, when the lightsaber slowly turns and kills Snoke, I'm not in the camp that's mourning Snoke and mourning the potential there. I think that with the Emperor, we didn't really have much information on him before he came back. I do wish this movie alluded to the Emperor's return as opposed to it just coming to us later in the Rise of Skywalker. I wish we would have had a better answer for Rey's parentage. You know, that was important to J.J. Abrams, and it gets really dropped like a sack of potatoes by Rian Johnson, and I think Snoke was kind of dropped like a sack of potatoes by Rian Johnson in favor of his Canto Bight story. Phasma, the same thing happens with her. It's just very frustrating to experience these really great scenes, and even the stuff on Crate is impactful, and it is cool. I mean, a lot of people hate Holdo, they hate Laura Dern's character. I don't have a problem with her, and I read the Leia novel, which, like, you shouldn't have to read a book to get the full image of the movie, but it hit hard because she's in the Leia novel, and you do see the relationship these two ladies have. I liked her. I like Laura Dern as an actress. I can overlook some dumb things in Star Wars in terms of, like, lack of character development, because this is not that kind of movie franchise. I'm here for, like, the cohesive, good story in a way, like, but it's not that deep, basically. The Last Jedi is a victim of trying to become deep, and then it doesn't. Leia has every right to be overpowered. Every right. She is a Skywalker, the daughter of the Chosen One. She has every right to be powerful. I don't care. I will defend Superman Leia with my dying breath. Luke disappearing into the eons was a little bit weirder, though. So, that was something else. I just wish this movie wasn't so disjointed, because it has elements of it that are amazing. The cinematography is beautiful. The action sequences are beautiful. The plot twists are really great. When Yoda burns down that tree, I was dying. The humor is really good, too. You know, like, this movie really hits the nail on the head with that, I think. I think it's a good balance of humor and not. There's just so much time wasted, and that's what really sucks here, because when you have only, like, a precious two to 2.5 hour time slot, you have to use every minute of that, and you have to use it to your advantage. You can't just have like 10 or 15 things going on in the movie and expect that to just flow perfectly well, because it's not going to. I think that he kind of killed any Kylo Ren redemption working out very well. That just doesn't happen. They kill Admiral Akbar, which felt unnecessary. It's like, why? Porgs are there. Baby Yoda is everything they wanted Porgs to be. Biggest problem with The Last Jedi, it takes you nowhere. We are in the same spot we ended up with. We have the same lineup of characters in an even worse predicament with just a bunch of hints at Force-sensitive kids. There's a different way of going through that. They do the Force-sensitive kid thing so many times in the Clone Wars TV series. It could have been handled better. The angst is high. There's a lot of, like, new ways of using the Force. Some of them are cool. I do like the Skype calls, the Force Skype calls. The whole, like, putting yourself in manifesting yourself in, like, hologram form in front of somebody else was very trippy. I thought that was an interesting thing that we'd never seen before in Star Wars. You know, I'm open to new things, to new methods of the Force. This is obviously not a realistic climate. I just wanted the characters to be given some depth to it. Poe really doesn't get given much. He deserves more screen time. It's weird to me that Finn, Poe, and Rey are just meeting at the very end of the movie. The three of them have finally all met. That feels strange for the new trio. I just think I'm not too confident in having Kylo Ren be the big bad. Now that we know Darth Sidious is coming back, my view on this is obviously changed. Which isn't fair, because when I first saw The Last Jedi, I was like, okay, wait, he's the big bad now? How is that going to work, with him and Hux just bitching each other out all the time?
Go.
I wanted more of the good stuff, the Force stuff, the focus on the Skywalker peeps, and so much less Canto Bite. May the Force be with you guys. You have a great day.